mind, and I started to get really engaged in social media, that the future of work was happening in Silicon Valley, in my opinion. And so I made it my point to get into the tech space to understand what was going on. It had to be more than foosball tables and the slides and beer taps. And so fast forward a few years, I broke into the tech space. And so for 5 years, I helped startups as a founder or an executive at 2 of my own tech startups. I have advised over 4 dozen tech companies now across North America, mostly in Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco, and Toronto. And I've helped to scale organizations, at least 3 of them within Vancouver. As mentioned, my last job before I went on my own was vice president and head of corporate innovation for BC Tech. And so in that role, my job was to help enterprise to become more innovative and agile. And it was also to help scale tech companies. Along the way, of course, I worked with the Vitechs and the XLRator Okanagan's and Invest Ottawa, Communitech, and Mars, etc., name them. And so likewise, XLRator, I know the space that you're in. And so this is a bit of my history. And what I've done now is taken all that, and I'm in the business of future-proofing. I future-proof organizations, teach them how to be naturally innovative, how to be naturally agile. What does that even mean? Because everyone says fail fast, but no one actually does anything about it. And that's my consulting practice. And I also have the future-proofing of people. And so I've opened boot camps in partnership with Red Academy. So we have campuses in Toronto and Vancouver. We're opening, just like yesterday. And we're opening in San Francisco and London, UK next year. And so what we care about is people and organizations thriving in their exponential times. So what do I learn? So I've got a bit of experience, and I don't have all the answers, but I do have a context, a global context, because I work in innovation across North America now. What I would suggest, first and foremost, I think it was Brenda at BDC who said this morning that Canada's falling behind. And so sadly, outside Toronto, I believe that's true. And so when you start to think about what's happening around the world, why are we still talking about Silicon Valley? Maybe you talk about Seattle or Boston. People aren't talking about what Tel Aviv is doing, what Singapore is doing, what Hong Kong is doing. The world is moving at a pace so profoundly. If you were to go to some of these different jurisdictions, you realize just how much we are falling behind. And so let's just take China. China has openly said they will be the leaders in AI and even in tech by 2030, globally. India today is creating has more IoT startups than any other country in the world. And so when we start thinking about innovation, we have to start looking at ourselves in Canada and saying, are we actually on par with? And the answer to me is we're not. And so the first thing I'm going to implore on you is that we've got to up our game around innovation because there's a global context. Mostly around tech is what we think. And so actually my next learning is this. This is a tech conference, XLRator, etc. We don't think tech. But in my opinion, most of your innovation is going to come from non-tech. So that might surprise you. But let's just back up a second. We all know, I hope, particularly you entrepreneurs, that we live in a hyper-human-centric world. It's about customer experience, about the team member experience, our users. We don't build products. We don't think we know the problems. We talk to our customers. What problem are we trying to solve for you? The arc that Keith talked about. And we allow our customers to opine and tell us what to build. And so if we live in this human-centric world, why do we think that tech's going to solve everything? And in fact, I won't digress too much, but in the world of automation, I believe that all that shitty jobs that no one likes to do, the mundane stuff, the day-to-day that automation should take away from us, will allow humans to be more creative, more compassionate, be better problem solvers. And so what I'm suggesting to you is, while I double down on tech, and I love tech, is that don't be confused, is that most of the innovation and the value you're going to bring to your customers and to your team members might actually be in the experience you create. It's why design thinking has taken the world by storm over the last 5 years. It's why we journey map. It's why we're always talking about experience. And so as you're innovating, hone in on the experience. Finally, well, not finally, but the other learning I would suggest is through all of this. If you're going to be an organization that's actually innovative and agile, it comes down to mindset. So how many of you, the raised hand thing, how many of you have heard the term growth mindset? Okay, so most of you, that's great. And so what does it say? It says to be open-minded, to embrace failure, etc., etc. So maybe we have it, and I know we saw a show of hands, a lot of CEOs in this group. Do you have a growth mindset the next layer down? Does all your team have that growth mindset? Because we've proven too, and I've worked with enterprise, and I've worked with some big companies, and I can tell you that most of them who built the lab didn't make them more innovative. The big banks and the F5s of the world say, let's create the lab, dump tens of millions of dollars in there, and let's try to recreate the startup mindset. Kind of did, but then it was isolated to the lab. So if you truly want to be competitive in a world that's moving as fast as ours, you've got to create a mindset through your entire organization, from the top to the bottom, from the centennial, forget about millennials, we've been bitching about them for 10 years, we now have the centennials in the workplace, right up to the baby boomers and older who are fighting this. We've got to create that mindset where everyone recognizes the pace at which the world is moving. So let me give you some examples. The first one is innovation horizons. So left had mentioned they had the 80-20 rule, and so I'm going to give you my twist on this. Most organizations aren't innovative, period, full stop. But those that are, generally are spending all of their innovation time or in resources in what we call Horizon 1. So Horizon 1 is your current products and services. By the way, if you're not constantly innovating your current products and services, you will be dead. But don't spend more than 70% of your time there. What we're suggesting is spend at least 20% on Horizon 2. Which is emerging technologies for the most part. There's some other aspects, but I like to hone in on emerging tech. So look at your business. How might you leverage blockchain? Or truly leverage AI? Maybe it's spatial computing. Spatial computing is going to profoundly change so many aspects of the workplace. And if you don't start dabbling today, what happens when that startup comes along? What happens when that technology comes around and infiltrates your sector and your business? Imagine first that you start to socialize this with your team, dabbling in these emerging techs, so when it comes, they're ready for it, as opposed to being blindsided. And so then the next horizon is what we call Horizon 3. These are moonshots. Okay? So we say, spend at least 10% of your time doing crazy-ass stuff. By the way, pause, any CFOs in the house? No? Any CFOs? Okay, so go back to your business and I'll tell you, you tell them, or I said this, maybe one of your biggest impediments to innovation is your CFO. Why? Because they're always looking for ROI, right? Somewhere along the line, that whole ROI mantra got so deeply entrenched in business. In a world that's moving as fast as ours, if you don't carve out at least 10% of your resources, time and money, into the Horizon 3 with zero expectation of ROI, you'll never come up with that moonshot. And so look at your innovation horizons. And here's where it gets super interesting. Some of the leading jurisdictions around the world are predicting this. So I'm talking about Tel Aviv, Silicon Valley. They're starting to crunch numbers and predict that in the next 10 years, you can flip your business model upside down based on these horizons. Said differently, in 10 years, your current revenues, 70% of them are going to be coming from Horizon 2, emerging technologies that are going to be here now and will be, and or a moonshot you or a competitor made. In 10 years, only 30% of your revenues will be where the streams are today. And so in some sectors, that might be even faster. So let's just walk through this really quickly. So I call this Innovation 2020, so it's really easy to pick on companies in hindsight, but I'm going to pick on a couple. Let's take Blockbuster, okay? Blockbuster, sorry, before I even get there, I didn't forget one other point. When you take moonshots, you've got to know who you truly are. Moonshots aren't just try anything. So if you're in banking, if you think you're in the business of deposits, you're wrong. Who are you fundamentally in the business for? So now let's play this out. Blockbuster. I'm looking at faces here, and I know there's a lot of you, as old as I am, who actually rented videos from a brick-and-mortar store. Okay, so what was Horizon 1? Do you guys remember at Blockbuster when you walked into the store, usually there's like 30 new releases, and there's a line above the door, and you ran in. All those really up there new release. Well, what was Innovation Horizon 1? You remember that day where it switched and you walked in and all of a sudden the whole freaking wall was new releases? They found a way in which they can bring that many and monetize that and create this other whatever supply chain or whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but they were able to actually bring in hundreds and hundreds of these new releases, even though you only watch them for a month. That's innovative. Current products and services. So before we get to Horizon 2 and 3, let's talk about what business Blockbuster's in. Were they in the business of renting videos? No. They're in the business of entertainment. So if they knew that, What was an emerging technology? This thing called the internet. This thing even called like home delivery, right? And what might have been a Horizon 3? Something like a Netflix. If you knew that you were in the business of entertainment, they may have invested in other areas instead of still brick and mortar and video rentals. Now you guys all know the story, right? The Netflix founders walked into Blockbuster and offered the company for $50 million. And the board of directors and the CEO laughed them out of the room. 3 years later, who was king? That's because Blockbuster didn't know what the business they're actually in. Really quickly, think about Kodak. Kodak thought they're in the business of what? Film cameras and paper. Well, in the course of 2 years, they went into bankruptcy protection because of what? Horizon 2, the digital camera, which I believe they co-designed. But they didn't realize they weren't in the business of paper cameras or film cameras. They're in the business of preserving memories. So when you think of your business, what are you in? In Kodak's case, they should have been Horizon 2, double down on digital, and in Horizon 3, maybe this thing called the cloud. And so what business are you actually in? Then apply the 70-20 horizons. Here's another mindset shift, which I hope you all get because you're here, is that ecosystems win. An external ecosystem is, let's look around and see what common problem we're trying to solve. And if you think you're going to solve a problem in a silo, you're probably wrong. What happens if we say there's a startup here trying to solve the same problem that enterprise is? Maybe we have some research or we have whoever else in our ecosystem. Understand your ecosystem, network with your external ecosystem, and try to solve problems together. Which also should lend, by the way, to why internal ecosystems matter. Gone are the days where marketing should be developing a digital campaign without talking to other people in the company or the customers. Gone are the days where HR should ever build a program and say, for whatever L&D program, and say, what do you guys think of this? The new world's about, again, human centricity and hyper-personalization and democratizing access to these things and development of them. So instead, in an internal ecosystem, let's pick on HR, we're going to build a new learning and development program using spatial computing. Maybe we're using mixed reality. So who would help to build that program? Everyone in the organization. So we have to start to get away from siloed thinking within our organizations. Cross-functional collaboration always wins, in my opinion. And then externally, the way we collaborate with those, whether it's, what was that word someone used? Frenemy. Even your frenemies. In this, if we had a longer time slot, I would talk to you about these forces that was mentioned. I'd get really amped about the connected generation technology and sharing economy. The way the world is moving is that we're trying to solve problems faster. We're open sourcing everything. We're sharing ideas. We're solving problems together. So if you don't develop a ecosystem mindset internally and externally, then my fear is that you're going to fall behind. The days of IP are dying. And Elon Musk is the only CEO out there saying, if you use our patents for good, then here they are. This is just the way the new generation is thinking. Here's another big problem I see in organizations, particularly legacy ones. 10-year plans. I love BHAGs, don't get me wrong. But anyone who goes out there and tries to think of problems, tries to solve problems with this large abstract and far mindset, you're missing the boat. When I talk about agile, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about agile software development. I'm talking about your ability to pivot with market conditions, etc. And so think of your organization. Are you that company that takes these big problems and create these business models and business plans and this waterfall project management and trying to solve some big, large, abstract and far, or create a large, abstract and far away solution? Or are you coming to one that's saying something that's small, concrete, in here? Right? Things that we can test, whether it's design thinking, lean methodology, using your MVPs, whatever language you're using, all we're saying is that the world is moving so fast with so many unknowns, let's start really small. Start with something small, get that proof of concept, iterate on it, fail fast, etc. That's what small, concrete, near means. And so I'm not saying you don't have a BHAG or a 3HAG, but if you're not going through annual planning or strategic planning on a quarterly basis, then you're moving too slow. If you're trying to build out a perfect product over a course of a 2-year waterfall plan, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Think small, concrete, and near. Iterate, double down, and go from there. The other piece is this, and so someone asked about, I believe the gentleman who I think asked where the innovative ideas come from, because every one of you, if I were to ask you today, any of your team members in your organizations, I asked you, are you really busy? How busy are you? We're all going to put up our hand and say, oh, we're so freaking busy, we have no time for anything. Here's my quick and dirty thesis on work. Almost every person in this room can break your work up into 3 components. One is keep the lights on, your KTLOs. These are things you have to do. You have to pay your staff. You probably should answer your customer emails and messaging, correct? It's the second aspect, your balanced scorecard. You have to generate revenue. This is how we govern our business. We have that top line, bottom line, NPS, maybe some community impact, whatever your balanced scorecard is, you better achieve that, or founders, shareholders, whoever are going to be pissed, right? So then what does that leave us? Discretionary time. And where do we at least, well, currently spend discretionary time? On things that we're good at, things that we've always done, and we're not actually being innovative. So here's where it gets really interesting. In my practice, we go into organizations who want to be innovative, and we challenge their KTLOs and balanced scorecard. You know what we find? That most people are spending 20 to 40% wasted time on KTLOs. I'm pushing paper that I don't even know why I'm pushing. I'm writing reports and sending reports that no one's even looking at. I'm working on things just because I'm good at, but offers no value to the organization. So let me ask you this. What if we were able to get you back 1 day a week from every team member in your organization? Just by cutting down on bullshit meetings, getting away from this email stuff of BCCing and CCing people just for the sake of it, and working on BS stuff. And Left, by the way, was talking about OKRs. You gotta be using OKRs just for what it's worth. I'm a big OKR fan. So what would happen if we could get back 1 day a week for you? Where would you apply that time? And when we go into organizations and say, I'm going to get you 50% time back to your balanced scorecard because you probably want to generate more revenue, but the other 50% of that time, everyone on your team should be spending it in some kind of innovative initiative. Doing hackathons, doing design thinking workshops, solving problems, getting a backlog and prioritizing. What are the problems you're trying to solve, the opportunities in the marketplace? What are they? Prioritize them and start building all these solutions, creating a backlog where we can go small, concrete, and near. We can go one design thinking workshop or one hackathon. We can unearth probably 40 ideas to solve your problems. And then you just test it. And imagine if you created that mentality in an organization. They will challenge everything. They will constantly be thinking of ways to solve problems. But if you don't build it into your cadence, if you don't build it into part of the way you work, it'll be a one-off thing. Let's do a hackathon once a year for optics. It's not meaningful. Innovation has to be deeply baked into the way you work, and where I started with, the mindset of your organization. And so for me, Engage Now is what I'm going to suggest in 2020. If you haven't heard of design thinking and human-centric design, design sprints, whatever, now get into that and start to understand that. Start to create that culture. We say, let's challenge the way we work. Let's allow for our people to develop that growth mindset. If you've got generational problems, start doing some reverse mentorship. It's no longer about the young person mentoring under this seasoned person learning the ways of the world. This is about the young person learning some stuff about business and the business, but also for that older generation to learn, how do these young people leverage these technologies? How do these young people, why do you think the way you do? Because you're not going to win, even though we're a young person's role, you will not win if we don't bring these generations together to solve problems together. But we've got to be empathetic to the baby boomer particularly, who has gone through linear change all their life, and now they're living in a world of exponential change. And change is hard at the best of times. So start to break down these demographic challenges where old people think young people are lazy and young people think old people are old and dying. Break down those barriers. Create the framework. I love when I get laughter on stage. Again, operational frameworks. Challenge the way they work. Go from large abstract and far to small, concrete, and near. Engage ecosystem thinking. Engage cross-functional collaboration with your own organization. Then and only then, in my opinion, are you going to start to become truly innovative. Because if you're not innovative, if you're not agile, I'm afraid that in the next decade or less, many of the organizations aren't going to be here today at a conference like this. So this is not fear-mongering. This is purely opportunistic. And if you guys buy into that, double down on it next year by 2020. All right, thanks very much. Try to leave some time for questions, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
We've got time for some questions. Yes.
I will be glad you're thinking. So I think it was a gentleman here on his phone. Did you ask a question to the left about where innovative ideas came from? Okay, so. Sorry?
Yeah, how are they manifested or developed?
Yeah, so that's where I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. They should be, well, left did say your team members, but they're not just going to happen. That's why doing even non-technical hackathons on a regular basis, saying what problems are we trying to solve organizationally, always opt in, so who's interested in what, lead a half day or full day, anchored on human-centristic design, say let's try to solve some problems. And as I mentioned, what happens when you do that, you guys have all seen the sticky note pictures and stuff, you build a backlog. You end up getting, even in the course of 4 or 6 hours, these types of events, you could have 20 or 30 ideas that you then prioritize and can now say, hey, what do we want to try this quarter or next quarter? And so that's one avenue, and the other one you can never forget is your customers. Your innovative ideas should be coming from customers. Customer development isn't just for startups. It's going out and talking about their experience, jury mapping and testing. Where is their highs and lows and how they're thinking, feeling, and doing, and tackling where their experience is the worst and helping them or allowing them to help opine into how to solve that problem. So it's easy to say it's your team members and your customers, but to me, without a framework, without a cadence, it's not going to happen. So build that into your organization. Okay, so any other
Question up front here.
How do you combat people that will block innovation or people that are afraid of failure within a business?
Okay, so what level are we talking? Executives or non-executives?
Generally executives.
Executives? Okay, so fear mongering. So I mean, you give examples, right? And so it's so easy to reference Kodak and Blockbuster because they're so long ago. Airbnb and Uber are next. But so for me, or for the more recent, but I think examples matter. So if we're out here in the valley, let's talk about finger food. Like how many people outside of the valley here know finger food? Unless you're deeply entrenched in tech, you have. I go across the country, and very few people say they know finger food. And yet here's a company that goes out there, and in the course of 3 months can build something in the spatial computing and the mixed reality world that's going to save an organization upwards of $1 billion and bringing product to market over the next 5 years. So when you start to tell stories like that, this was in the semi-truck design, semi-truck world. So when you start to bring real examples to the executive, particularly locals, like, hey, you guys heard of finger food? Did you know they partnered with Ecosystem, by the way, with Microsoft and HoloLens and a company in the United States, and they were able to solve this problem, getting a product to market faster that saved them $40 million, and they've got 20 cars in production. So if you look at that over time, that could be upwards of $800 million savings, and they built the tech in 3 months. When you start to tell executives real stories about how disruption is happening, then they're like, oh, dang. And sometimes, I hate to say this, it seems self-serving, but sometimes you need a third party. You need someone agnostic to your organization to come in and fearmonger, if that's the word you want to use. Because you get so caught up in your day-to-day KTO stuff, right? And so I think to answer your question, a couple of things. Examples, real examples. 2, bring in other people who are experts in the area to socialize this idea. And actually, as I'm talking through this, I would say CEOs aren't usually the challenge. My partners are almost always with the executive teams of companies. And actually the problem is the CEO, she gets it. And she hires us to say, can you get the rest of my team to buy into this? Because they're not getting it. And so that's why she leverages an external party to say, hey, it's not just me, CEO, talking. It's experts talking, and here's examples. Can I just mention, so does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, great.
Can I also digress a little bit? So now you think of non-manager executives. So quick story. If you go back, and this is the baby boomer story. So we know through our experience that there's a cutoff. It's the baby boomer. Undeniable. When we're talking about change and all these things we're talking about, the resistance is there because life in theirs has always been linear. So we tried to figure this out. We went into one organization, it's white collar, and they're fairly well-paid white collar office staff. We went into the homes of the baby boomer, and we said, talk to us about technology in your home. So remember, white collar, fairly frugal. Oh, Dad, look at my 8-inch screen TV. I put up here, and I got Wi-Fi cameras, and okay, Google, what's the weather like? And they were so excited about the technology they had at home. So then they didn't know why we're doing this. Then we said, let me talk to you about your apps on your phone. So they're going, oh, they have more apps than I do. And they're going through, remember, they're going through their phone showing me all the apps. So isn't that interesting? Because I'm here, they don't know this, because they're telling me at your office that you're resisting change. And so what we found was that the baby boomer just needed time. So the baby boomer 3 or 4 years ago who was bitching at the kids over here for being on their phone too much, you're obsessed with the thing called Facebook, I can't believe you're taking pictures of them, blah, 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 you're lazy. Well, guess what? Fast forward 3 or 4 years, who's the biggest adopter of Facebook? Baby boomers. Young kids, they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat, right? And so what did that tell us? It told us that there's a universal truth that everyone wants to stay young, and it's going to be probably through technology. But what do we do in the workplace? We're going to change our office time, we're going to change the way we dress, we're going to adopt OKRs, we're going to start doing these things called hackathons, and you just got to do it. How is that being any kind of like having human centricity to them, having empathy for them? But in their home, where they had the choice to adopt what they wanted to, or were brought along the journey with their kids, now they're staying in Airbnbs, taking Ubers, except for Vancouver, or all these apps, all these smartphones. And so I know that's long-winded, but I think it's a profound story if you really think about it, is that if you want to embrace change in your workplace, it has to start at the top, which I hope I answered that question. Even when they get it, you're not going to get change if you don't build in frameworks, if you don't have empathy multiple generations and how they're adopting and thinking about change in the workplace. It just won't happen.
All right, thank you, Rocky. Let's hear it for Rocky.